Okay, and welcome back to the Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications, Chapter 2 Word Problems, the odd number problems. We left off on, I believe it was 45. Yep, so we're going to pick up on word problem 2-47. Okay. Andy, who loves to cook, makes apple cider for his family. The recipe serves 6 calls for these numbers: 1.5 pounds of apples, 3 1/4 cups of flour, quarter cup of margarine, 2 3/8 cups of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Now remember, these ingredients serve 6, and anybody who bakes or cooks or whatever have you, you know, you do this all of the time. I mean, it's not like you don't know how to do this. When you have to change the recipe in order to decide, um, feed more, feed less. Like for example, if I only wanted to serve 3 people, well, 3 is half of 6, so I would reduce all of these ingredients by half. Okay, so even before I look at what the question is asking me, this is what's running through my head. It's a recipe, and it tells me it serves 6, and these are the how much for the ingredients. And most likely, if I want to change for the number of people it's going to serve, I'm either going to multiply or divide in some way, shape, or form in order to find out what the exact amounts of the ingredients should be. Okay, so the question says, since guests are coming, Andy wants to make a cobbler that will serve 15, or an increase in the recipe of 2.5 times. How much will each ingredient, how much of each ingredient should Andy use? Okay, now remember, it's telling you 2.5 times. If the problem didn't tell you that, and it said it wanted to serve 15, you would have to figure that 2.5 times out for yourself. In other words, if I had 15 and it serves 6, okay, well, I'm going to divide the 6 and the 15 in order to be able to figure out, how much I'm going to have to increase it by how much. So 6 and the 15 goes 2, that's 12, 3 left over, 3 remaining, so 2 3/6. And when I reduce that to the lowest terms, I get 2.5. So I'm going to have to increase these ingredients by the 2.5 times. So let me do that by moving on to the next slide. And I'm going to start with, let's see here, 1.5 pounds of apples. So I have 1.5 pounds of apples times 2.5 times. Okay. The easiest way to do this, because I have mixed fractions, is to mixed numbers is to turn them into fractions. So 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So that gives me 3/2 times 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So 5/2. And now I can just multiply across. So 3 times 5 is 15, 2 times 2 is 4, and when I divide 4 into 15, I get 3 is 12, and 3 remaining over 4. So I need 3 3/4 pounds of apples. Okay, let's see here. Next is the 3 1/4 cups of flours times the 2.5. Okay, we're doing the same exact thing. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 is 13 over 4 times 5/2. Okay, so I multiply across my numerators. 13 times 5 is 65. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 can go into 65 8 times. That's 64. From 65 gives me 1 left over, and 8 in the denominator. So I need 8 1/4 cups of flour, 8 1/8 cups of flour. Okay, what's next? 1/4 cup of margarine. So I have 1/4 times 2.5. Again, 1/4 times 5/2. All of these are the same, so it's 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 4 is 8, and so I only need 5/8 of a cup of margarine. Let me divide this in half. Okay, next is the 2 3/8 of cups of sugar. These are all the same. Okay, so 2 times 8 is 16, plus 3 is 19/8, times 5/2. Multiply across. Okay, 5 times 9 is 45, plus 4 is 95, over 16. 16 can go into 95, let's see, 5 times. So 95 divided by 16 is 5, so that's 30, 80 with 15 left over. So I have 15 in the numerator and 16 in the denominator. So I need 5 and 15/16 cups of sugar. And lastly, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. So 2/1 times 5/2. Here we can cancel. 2 and a 2 goes 1, 2 and a 2 goes 1. So 1 times 5 is 5/1, and that's 5 teaspoons of cinnamon in order to answer that question. Basically, you know how to do one, you knew how to do all of the rest of them. Notice I just kept on using the 5/2 because I converted it the first time around. Okay? Next problem, 2-49. A marketing class of North Shore Community College conducted a viewer preference survey. Their survey showed that 5/6 of the people surveyed preferred Apple's iPhone over BlackBerry. Okay. Well, again, if I'm thinking here, here's the whole, and if I divided this up into 6, let's see if I can't do this easy. Okay, that's 4. That's 6. Okay, I realize it's not even, but since we're talking about sixths here, the whole represents 6/6, and 5/6 prefer Apple's iPhone, and that means 1/6 prefers BlackBerry. Okay, assume 2,400 responded to the survey. How many favored using BlackBerry? So I have 2,400. Now, I could, multiply the 2,400, excuse me, by 5/6, and then get that answer and subtract it. Get an answer and then subtract it from the 2,400. Okay, and whatever is left over would be my BlackBerry users. Okay, but because I was thinking in this perspective over here, okay, in other words, saying I had 5/6, that should be a 6 there, sorry. If I had 5/6, that means the remaining 1/6 is BlackBerry users. All I need to do is just multiply the 2,400 times 1/6. So I can reduce here. 6 can go into 6 once, and 6 can go into 2,400 400 times. So that's 400/1 or 400. So my answer is 400 BlackBerry users. Okay. See how alternate thinking here, and if you have to diagram it out, makes doing a problem easier. Right, problem 2-51. Temco has a machine that produces 12.5 baseball gloves each hour in the last 2 days. Okay, so in my mind, in the last 2 days, since we're talking about hours, there's 24 hours in a day, and in the last 2 days, that's 48 hours. Again, just additional information that I'm thinking about. And if I wanted to, I could take that a step further and I multiply that by the 12.5 baseball gloves, and it would tell me how many they produced in total over those days. Now remember, I've read the problem up to here, and because I'm actively thinking, see how much information I've gleaned. Okay, I may use it, I may not use it, but it's information that's sort of stored in the back of my head. Okay, so it goes on. The machine has run for a total of 22 hours. Okay, so in the last 2 days, the machine has run for 22 hours. It hasn't run for the full 48. It's only run for the 22. How many baseball gloves has Temco produced? All right, all of that additional information, you know, this here 2 days is not needed, right? Remember, direct, not needed, not applicable, and modified, right? When you're looking at this data, sure, I'm storing this information. I'm thinking about it in the back of my head, but that doesn't necessarily mean I need it. And in this case here, because it says how many baseball gloves has Temco produced, but they've only worked 24 hours, that was direct information. This 12.5 is direct information. Anything else is not needed here, and I don't need to modify it in order to help me solve the problem. So I take my 22 times my 12.5, okay, and I convert these into fractions. So 22 over 1 times 2 times 12 is 24 plus 1 is 25 over 2. I can reduce. 2 and the 1 goes 2, 2 and the 22 goes 11, and then I can multiply 11 times 25. Now, quick aside here. You're going to have people who are going to snatch up their calculator and they're going to punch in their calculator 25 times 11 and figure it out. You're going to have people who are going to do the math by hand, doing it on the page, right? 25 and 25, that's 275, okay? And nothing wrong with that. Mentally, what I'm doing here is I'm saying I have 11. Well, 10 times 25 is 250, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm taking 11, I'm saying, oh, 10 gives me an easy number that I can multiply 25 with. 25 times 10 is 250. All I need to do is just add the extra 0 to the 25 in order to get 250. But I have 125 left over, so I'm going to say, okay, 250 plus the 25 equals 275. And that's how I did it in my head real quick, all right, over 1. Again, let me go over this so that it makes sense, because it's just a little shortcut trick, you know, whatever you want to call it. We have to multiply 11 times 25. We can do it on a calculator. We can do the math by hand on a piece of paper, or we can think. And when I think, well, I know that, you know, I have 25 and 11, there's 10 plus 1 makes 11. And if I know 10 times 25 is 250, 250 plus the 125 is 275. And bam, it's faster than you could punch into the calculator or write on a piece of paper. All because I was able to think a little bit and I used a little bit of judgment here. Let's say instead of 11, I had 12, right? I do the same thing. I'd say, oh, well, 250 and 225s is 50, so I end up with 250 plus 50 is 300. And I'd probably even do the same thing with 13 if I had 13. I'd say 250 and 75 is 325. That's how quickly I did it in my head. I didn't notice I went 13 is, you know, 250 plus 75, because I know 3 times 75, I've done it so many times in my life that I know 3 times 75 is 3 times 25 is 75, and 75 and 250 is 325. Okay, so that's just a quick little mental process that I go through in order to be able to do some problems quicker. Do I do it all of the time? No. Okay, but I do it some of the times when it makes sense. And the more problems that you do, the better you become accustomed to doing it, and it makes doing your work a little bit quicker and easier. Okay, I'm at 15 minutes, but I only have one more problem to go here, so I'm going to move on to the next problem here. It says a Hamilton 2-53. A Hamilton multi-touch watch was originally priced at $600. At closing of the Alpha Omega jewelry shop, the watch is being reduced by 1/4. What is the new selling price? So I have 600, and since it's being reduced by 1/4, okay, I can figure out how much it's being reduced and then subtract it. The 600, subtract it from the 600 to get my answer. Or, again, since I'm talking about quarters, I have 4 quarters, and since it's being reduced by this 1/4 here, that means I have 3 quarters here. And I'm asking, the question is asking, what is the new selling price? Well, if I do this mental process here where I take, 4/4 subtracting 1/4 and I get 3 quarters, it's easier for me to multiply the 600 by 3 quarters in order to arrive at my answer. 4 can go into 4 once, 4 into 600 goes 150. 150 times 3 is 450 over 1, which is 450, and that's my answer. Okay, it's what is the new selling price. Okay. Again, real quick, I could have, when I was doing the math, okay, when I'm reading the problem, it says reduced by 1/4. Well, 1/4 plus 3 quarters is equal to 4 quarters, which is the whole. Remember, this is the whole. And 1/4, that means these have to be 3 quarters. It's asking me what is the new selling price. Well, if I'm taking this away, this is what's left, so I can multiply by 3 quarters in order to figure out the 450. If I wanted to do the other way, where I can say, okay, I'm reducing by 1/4, well then I can take the 600 times the 1/4 and reduce it this way. 4 into 600 goes 150, so I end up with 150. That's how much it's being reduced by. Well, I don't want to know what it's being reduced by. I want to know what the new selling price is, so I have to take the 600 and subtract the 150, and I get my 450 as my answer. Okay, and that's it, and I will see you in the practice problems.